Hello, everyone. We are still waiting to get to critical mass, waiting on a few more folks, but we are live on YouTube right now. This is being streamed and we will get started momentarily. I hear you now.
Yep.
Good.
You guys can hear us now? I'm getting some head nods. That's great. Takes a village over here. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vern Malik. I am the Deputy Director of Operations for OCP, also wearing the interim director's hat as of Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock when Eric Gunderson left us for greener pastures, brighter futures. We're still a little bit mad at him for that, but we'll get through it all. So I'll be leading the meeting today for OCP. Just want to let you all know I attended the last meeting, so I was there. I missed the first meeting, but I did catch up on it, watching it on the YouTube channel. So I feel like I've been plugged right in all along and working with the OCP staff and Metrc as well as we work through all the great information that we're getting from this group. So wanted to let you know that piece of it. Got a couple of sort of housekeeping agenda items that I wanted to talk about. The first one is that one of our members is not here. Hillary Reeder from Highbrow is no longer with Highbrow. She is actually working for OCP now. We stole her away and she is part of our data analytics team. So we're excited to have her on our team right now and providing some really great feedback about the industry side and that perspective that sometimes as regulators we know we don't have, but we don't know what we don't know. So we're thrilled to have Hillary on our team, but it also means that she can't really participate as an industry person in this group. So so Hillary stepped aside from that. I'm comfortable that we have great representation on this committee and this work group, so we should be able to move right along and hopefully not even miss a beat. So I wanted to make that announcement and just kind of go through the agenda real quickly for people that may not have seen the agenda, or if you're watching it on YouTube. First thing on here is Metrc. So Metrc has agreed to join us today, make a presentation to go over really like 3 areas that have been identified through this group. So they're going to be available to talk to us, and they have a presentation actually on reports, training, and customer service. So those three areas are what Metrc's going to be presenting on today. The way we'd like to kind of structure that presentation with Metrc is, I'll be handing it over to them. Brent Doherty from their team is here. He'll introduce his other folks that are with him for the presentation, but we'd like to do one category at a time, like reports, say. Let them present on reports and then take questions about that. Let them present on training, take questions on that, so that we kind of want to ask questions as we go along, but keep them topic specific so that we can sort of maintain a structure to it, if you will. So that's what we'd like to do there. We want to talk more about testing. We want to talk about APIs. We want to talk about automation, user experience gaps, and then we'll do a wrap with a conclusion of this meeting and next steps, and whether or not we're going to want to have a fourth meeting to sort of put a final bow on things. I think we will, but we'll talk about that at the end. And just so you all know, from on the OCP side of the house, I have Lisa Roberts sitting in the room here with me. She's our other deputy director in charge of strategic initiatives, and John Gagnon, who's the director of data analytics. Both of them have been right in here with this group since day one. And they're still here and sitting in the room with me to give me a hand and try to make sure I don't say something I shouldn't say. So if you happen to see something that looks like a football bouncing off my head, it's because I said something I shouldn't say, and they're trying to get my attention. But that's about all I have for an introduction. Is it worthwhile for us to go around the screen and do introductions, or do you guys feel like you already know each other and pretty good on that? I'll take whatever direction people want. Not seeing a whole lot of desire, so I think we can maybe just jump right in. So I'm going to hand it over to Brent Doherty from Metrc. And Brent, if you want to take it away, and feel free to introduce your team.
Thanks, Vern. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. We're really excited to develop better relationships with the industry here in Maine. And we've been very interested in being involved in these work groups to try to get your feedback on some of these topics, as well as provide some updates here. So I'm going to pop open our presentation and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, can everyone see this? Sure. All right, perfect. All right, so for the agenda today, first off, I want to start off by introducing a few folks. First, I'll introduce myself. My name is Brent Doherty. I'm a key program manager with Metrc. I've been with the company for a little over four and a half years now. I started actually as a program manager. I helped with Maine's implementation back in 2020. So I've been working pretty closely with Maine and in the Office of Cannabis Policy since the inception. So we're excited to continue that relationship and developing better relationships with you all, and happy to be here. So I'll turn it over to Myra to introduce herself. Maybe Myra might not be on. I will turn it over. Oh, there she is.
All right, hello, let's try this again. My name is Myra Chin. I am the Laboratory Testing and Training Program Manager with Metrc, and I'm happy to be here. I'll turn it back over to Brent.
Let's kick it over to Tricia.
Hi, my name is Tricia Mills. I'm the Director of Support. So all things support and testing is all me for you all. I've been with Metrc for almost 10 years now. So pretty much from its inception. And I'm really happy to be a part of you guys' user group.
Thanks, Myra. Thanks, Tricia. So we're going to be covering, as Vern stated, 3 different sections here today. based on the agenda. So we're going to first start with training. That's going to be covered by Myra, who is the lead for our training program. She's going to talk a little bit about what our options right now are for training and really emphasize how you access that as well as what is available. Then we're going to turn it over to Tricia for support, kind of talk through the past performance that we've had on the support line that you've all experienced, and really give you an explanation of where we were and where we're at. And then finally, I'll finish off and kind of talk through some of the improvements we're looking to make on the reports side of things. We have some really exciting pieces there that we're happy to share. But that will be what we're covering today. Again, as Vern noted, please, we'll ask for questions at the end of each section. Please keep those questions, topic specific. We will have some time at the end for more of a general Q&A relating to Metrc of the presentation. So if you have any questions kind of off topic here, please just save those for the end. Thanks. All right, with that, I will turn it over to Myra.
All right, today we're going to talk about training at this point. So for our training, we have multiple opportunities for training in Metrc. So we have our Metrc Learn. All of our trainings are on demand now, which hopefully is a plus for you all. So how you're going to register for Metrc, you can go to the Metrc homepage and for your login, you can select the sign up for training. And then you will complete that registration information for us. That just tells us who you are, what license you're with, the information, because we want to get to know you. And then once you have your login, your Metrc credentials for that Metrc Learn, then you can go in and register for Metrc Learn. Now, again, all of our training is available. You have access through that Metrc Learn to repeat the new business training, any advanced trainings, as well as we are offering now training journeys that are facility type specific. So cultivation, sales, etc. So all of those things are available for you. And so you're going to have that available in your Metrc Learn. And let's say that you're a cultivator. There are 3 levels of training within that journey, and you have level 1, level 2, and then we call you a guru. And so within each of those levels, there are modules that you will watch, and it'll be a short little video. And at the end of that video, then we're going to actually ask you to do a demonstration on whatever functionality that you just learned. For example, the very first module is how to log into Metrc. I know for all of you fine folks here, that is not a difficulty. So we show you how to log in, and then we actually ask you to log in with your hands-on demonstration. All of these modules are self-paced. So if you want to watch it at 1 a.m., you are more than welcome to. If you want to watch it at whatever time is convenient for you, you set the marker on how fast you go and what you learn and when you learn it. At the end of each level, there will be a knowledge check. After that knowledge check, you're going to be able to print a certificate that shows anybody and everybody that you want to show, I am a level 1 learner, or I'm a level 2, or hey, when you get to that guru, you better show off that certificate and tell them how proud you are of all that work. So we have that available to you. So the way you'll get there is the Metrc Learn .bridgeapp.com //login. And this will be available to you. So we have those multiple ways of learning. So whatever floats your boat, you have that available. Within that, besides the My Learning Journeys, you have your learning library. In that learning library, this is where you're going to have those modules or those trainings that you have access to, that new business, the advanced trainings like the advanced cultivation training, those individual trainings. Again, you can watch them at any time. Excuse me. And right below each one of those trainings, it's going to tell you how long it is. That way you can plan your time accordingly. And as you can see, most of them are not that 3-hour class that it used to be. We're trying to trim these things down to make your lives easier because we know that you are very busy folks. So when you're logging in, you'll see that learning library, and you'll be able to see all of the individual webinars or trainings and or specific smaller mini trainings that we're offering to you there. And hopefully you'll have a better time finding the training, and as well as taking the trainings that you would like to take, and being able to learn things when you want to learn them, because the whole point of having a software that is accessible is you learn the training when you want to learn it. So hopefully that's helpful to you. All right. So beyond that Metrc Learn training, there is a training calendar. So if there's other opportunities for training, we will have that training calendar as your third choice up there. So if you see Metrc Learning, that's your journeys. Learning library, that is your new and advanced trainings, as well as mini trainings that we have available. And then you have the training calendar. Likewise, we also have a YouTube channel, and in the YouTube channel, there are generic videos that if you wanted to look and see those, you can actually see those. All right, next slide.
That's the end of our session here. So it's now time for any questions on the training piece. I see Elliot's got his hand raised.
First off, I wanted to say thank you guys for coming and being a part of these meetings. We've had a few now back and forth about some of these trainings that, when we first started, a lot of us got that new business training, which was, 5 questions. It was fairly quick. It was kind of to get us off the ground. And then unfortunately, a lot of the training was actually done in the software where we made errors. I mean, I've got a few that I can talk about with wet flour, where it was categorized as buds flour, and we were paying a much higher tax when we were transferring it. And it should have been categorized as wet flour, not buds flour. Now, we still have those items in there that we made incorrectly because inventory was assigned to them and the software can't get rid of them. And one of the things that we talked about in this group that we thought would be really helpful would be like a sandbox. And a lot of us get to have an option, sort of something like that when we play with a different system. I know we're getting into APIs and that sort of end after this, but is there anything in the works with Metrc about putting together a sandbox so that, you don't have to play in your live space and risk doing some of those errors that we unfortunately were a part of?
I think that's something that we can discuss with the OCP on that front. I can't speak to anything currently that we'd be providing, but that is something, that we've heard that feedback in our discussion with the OCP. Any other questions for on the training aspect? All righty. Not seeing anything else. So of course, just a reminder, we'll have a Q&A session at the end as well. So if you think of anything, you can use that time towards the end of our presentation. So now I will kick it over to Tricia to talk about support.
Thanks, Brent. Appreciate that. Okay, so on the support piece, we understand that we have had some issues with turnaround time for Maine, and we wanted to go through that. And we've had, obviously in June, everybody felt the pain of the wait times on support, the ticketing times, and we do recognize that. And we wanted to kind of talk through this because we want to make sure that we level set of how we change things because of the impact that happened in June. We went through the process and saw what went wrong, what went right, what worked, and what didn't work. So to kind of give you guys an overview for Maine, a regular ticket in June started with 18.17 hours to actually take care of a ticket. Testing tickets were at 85.92 hours, so really pushing way over that 72-hour window that we were really hoping to claim. Phone time was on average over 2-hour wait time. It was really bad in June, and all of us understand that. In July, we started really making some changes and pulling some levers to speed things up, get more staffed up to be able to handle the volume. And what we started to, as you watch this, what you'll start to see is in July and August, September, it starts falling. You'll notice that the support tickets fell quite regularly. However, the testing tickets were much slower to get to a faster pace. By the time that we rolled into September, the testing tickets were on a 9.74-hour turnaround time. So 9-hour wait time. And right now we're about the same. Now we do allocate for every state that there is a 72-hour turnaround time in case there's a more complex ticket that comes through. So that is so that we can do the research, follow the protocols and processes that we've set up with the OCP so that we never unlock something that should not be unlocked. We don't want to put something out into the industry that shouldn't be out there. So we want to make sure that we leave ourselves plenty of time. Now, some of the tickets may come in with one package, and some of you all may send in something with 50 packages on it. And we have to research each one of those to make sure that we are following every research and protocol going forward. We are moving at a very much faster clip. We are down to our regular tickets are about a 6-hour turnaround time. And the average phone wait time is about 6.5 minutes for the month of October. We actually got lower than that in September at 5 minutes and 45 seconds on average to wait on the phone line. So you'll see in these particular graphs that how we started in June, the testing tickets were through the roof. Support tickets were a little bit higher, but not that bad. And then the testing tickets started falling through. Now, I will tell you that some of this was because of the fact that we were getting duplicate tickets instead of when the industries were emailing in, they'd ask about a testing ticket and ask it to be unlocked and then send in a second email or a third email. And so what that does is it starts to stack up in testing, and it's what we call a duplicate ticket. And we have to combine all of those into one ticket since it's just one issue. So we did have to go ahead and staff up to make sure that we went through the backlog. But as you'll see in these, we definitely had a backlog in June and July. And then by August, we were back on track, and we have carried that through September and now October to make sure that we're turning the tickets around in a very quick manner as quickly as we can. Now, we don't want to turn on the fire and just brush through your tickets, whether it's a regular ticket or a testing ticket, because we don't want to give you bad information. We want to make sure that we are following the information that the OCP has given us, and we're making sure that everybody has at least double checked that answer to make sure nothing has changed throughout the week, to make sure that we're giving you the best information possible for whatever situation you may find yourselves in. So you'll see that the phone call wait times also diminished quite rapidly from July to August, and it has come down through October. We are maintaining this, and we have also staffed up on support. We staffed up in June, we staffed up in August, and now we're going to staff up in October again. So what we're doing is we are staffing up along the way to make sure we're handling the volume so we don't repeat June ever again. So we definitely learned some things through that process. But here is where we are today in the fact that we have been able to maintain that for the 3 months. So that is what I have. So I will ask, does anybody have any questions on support or testing?
I see Elliott's got his hand raised again.
I really don't have a question. I have like 2 comments really. Number one, the staff who I do get to interact with on the Metrc end are amazing. You know, they've definitely gotten better. I know that's not a metric that we're looking at here, but their understanding of even our own state and their process of how these things go, they've gotten way better. And I do want to say that they have the individuals who we're working with are certainly more knowledgeable, just like we are, as we kind of move through these things. And the second one that I wanted to ask, and I noticed this when we had Hurricane Ian come through, in Florida, we have a large, you guys have a large base there that had the hurricane come through. You sent out a warning that the calls may go up or that we may have more issues. And I've also noticed one of the ones we talked about in previous meetings was when you guys onboard a new state. So a new state's coming on, you send out a little notice that's like, hey, we have a new state. You can probably expect some increased call times and stuff. And those warnings are incredibly helpful. I mean, I know you're sending them out with a purpose, but we really do appreciate them. So we know, hey, a hurricane's hitting, not much we can do. Our staff is here. You're probably going to experience wait times. Hey, we're bringing on a new state. It's probably going to suck. Expect longer wait times. So those warnings have been really awesome. And I think that the staff who we have got to engage with have gotten better. So no real questions, but a few things there.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Elliot.
Elliot.
Yeah, that's great, and we love hearing that great feedback about not only staff but also that the messaging we are sending out. That's something we are trying to improve upon. We are not, as we're adding to the support staff, we're also adding to other parts of the avenues of the organization to be able to provide better updates, but more concise messaging, things like that. So appreciate that. All right, moving on, I'm going to present on the reports and some of the things we are moving forward with. All right, so first off, I did want to just kind of level set. We are moving towards a platform leveraging Tableau. So I don't know, I don't want to assume everyone knows what Tableau is, but what it is a data visualization and database, that you can, run more specific reports on, build visualizations. We're trying to improve the data analytics that we're offering you all. We understand that that's very important to your businesses and how it's run. So we are working towards that. A good example, if you don't know what Tableau is, and a nice easy plug for the OCP here is that they do have an open data platform that does leverage that technology. Our intent is to be able to provide that in a meaningful way to the folks on the industry side. So I'll just flip over here. So currently right now, when you're looking at the reports that we offer, there's canned reports already available, right? Those canned reports, I know sometimes there are some limitations there, specifically, that you can only run it for one license type, one license at a time. Maybe some of those fields are not available. If you do have questions on industry report, on those reports, there is the industry reports guide that is available under the support tab. But I also want to just highlight, we do have that ability to use columnar sorting on all of our tables, as well as the ability to export that. So you can, in some ways, create some custom reports based on parameters you need. So that is something that is currently available. Obviously, that's not what our end state is going to be. When it comes to Tableau and what we're planning on rolling out here in 2023, this will, that's, so the screenshot on the top that you see there, that's what we currently have. If you look at the bottom, that's going to be kind of what it's going to look like a little bit more once we get into Tableau. We are still working through that. We have not gotten it to a final state yet. That's why it's coming in 2023. But the good news is you'll be able to have the ability to cross or put, use data from across multiple licenses if you have access to them. So that's going to be a huge improvement for you all in the industry, as well as the enhanced ability to sort, filter, and create visualizations, which are super helpful when you're trying to put together something, a lot of complex data into one picture. That's, something that's going to be available to you as well. So we are really excited about moving towards this and really just making the analytics available to you through the platform much more dynamic and add a lot more value. So and again, we're planning on rolling that out in 2023. And as we progress and have more information, we will be sharing that to the industry. That is the end of my piece on the reports. Is there any questions about that specifically? And then if there is not, we can move on to the general Q&A session. I see a hand raised here. I got two. I will start with Rebecca. I'm going left to right here. Rebecca, if you want to give your question, then we'll move to Eddie.
Thank you. Yeah, my question with this change with Tableau, are we going to have a historical data storage within this new function, or are we still going to have to every month be pulling these custom reports? And I ask this because I have experienced some facilities that maybe lose their Google Drive access, and then they have to kind of rebuild these reports, and that's almost impossible with the current functions.
Okay, so you're asking for the ability to pull large data sets out of the system? Is that what you're?
From past months, past years, the historical data collection. Because right now, if I were to try to pull a report of what happened in December last year, it's not going to give me what I'm looking for.
And when you say it's not going to give you what you're looking for, is that, can you just, I just want to make sure I'm getting the correct feedback.
Yeah. It's basically nothing. It only pulls up what's currently being in our system. So if something finishes out, then it kind of leaves the data and we can't build a report off of it.
You're talking about inventory specifically?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to just be clarified there, because if you're talking about sales, you should be able to pull a report for.
Oh yeah, no, that part was great. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So we're talking about inventory. I think that there is a point in time inventory report. I think that piece is something that we are working towards, making that a little bit more usable, so that would be what we'd be using. But certainly as far as, going back in historical data, that's some feedback we can take in. Obviously we're still working through this project on our side. So any feedback you have, that's obviously valuable for us to collect and be able to synthesize into, our priorities there. So I appreciate that feedback, and, we'll take note of it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, move on to Eddie.
Hey there. 2023, it's great that this is going to be available, relatively soon. I'm just wondering if there's any more specificity, because 2023 has a lot of days in it. So are we talking, it could be in 3 months, or it could be in 15 months?
Yes. Yes, please, Rebecca, please mute. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Eddie, obviously, we're still working through that project. We don't have specific details yet. That's, that will be more to come. We're hopeful that we're looking at more on the front end, but, we obviously understand, obviously you understand that there are aspects that we have to take into consideration when it comes to development and making sure that that product that we produce is going to be the right one and the right solution. So we don't have a specific timeline yet, but as we advance through the project, we will be giving additional updates to the industry.
Great, thanks so much. And this may be an update to come later, but my follow-up question is there any ability through this reporting function, or through the new reporting Tableau functionality, to join different data sets together? So say inventory and sales, or is it sort of an enhanced view of the current reports that already exist?
So yeah, just to give a little bit of background there. So our initial first off is we're trying to move from our CAN reports into this more. So we're going to focus really on what's already available and improving those. Obviously this project is not going to end with the first iteration. We are going to work through multiple iterations of this. So that's something maybe we can look at and take into consideration going down the line.
Cool, thanks.
All right, Elliot, I see Elliot's got a question.
Yeah, 2 parts. One, I know we talked about training for those reports that we currently have. And then as you roll out Tableau, some training on how to use that, like inside that learning center, I think would be really helpful, just as a point.
No, great feedback. Appreciate it. I'm assuming, Eddie, you just forgot to take your hand down, unless you had another question. All right. Okay. Anything else on the reports, and then we'll move on to the more general Q&A session, and then we will wrap things up. So, and turn it back over to the OCP. So I will. So like I said, now we're kind of in more of the free form question section. So I know that we were kind of specific on those 3 topics, but obviously we want to give an opportunity to hear some feedback from you all and answer any questions you might have. Just be cognizant there might be some things we might not be able to speak to fully on, just based on some things we're working on internally. So, all right, Elliot.
Just keep coming back to the well here, but my question is about batching of flour. That's something that OCP is working on. I know it's something that's coming down the line. And, in that regard, I really was just hoping that when, sometimes we get those messages that say things like, one was sent out a little while ago about Keef, how to categorize it, how to go about working with it. When that batching does come out, again, if we had something just to get it to us, so we know, like, when the state says it's okay to go, we can batch these, and hopefully you know what I mean by when I'm talking about the batching of flower, the same strain and the same grow phase all being on one tag versus being on 600 different tags individually on the plants. When that does come out, if Metrc could have some training for us, because I think it's something we're all going to want to do really quickly. I think it's a pivot we'll all want to make fast. And we just want to make sure we're doing it right, so we don't end up with tons of phone calls back and forth, and some training material on that, I think, would be really helpful.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things, and I can't really speak too much to the specifics of the functionality, but as far as training goes, and I'll let Vern speak to the rest of it, but as far as training goes, our intent was always to produce additional content there for any new features in Metrc, especially ones as impactful as what you're discussing. So I'll turn it back over to Vern if you got any additional feedback.
Yeah, no, the only thing I just wanted to say is that, first off, Elliot, that's a great question, and it's one of those things that does get commonly overlooked, right? We just assume people are going to know how to do what we're talking about, and we don't provide the training. So that's a great flag for us. And I just wanted to let this group know that we are actively working hard with Metrc and procurement and amending the contract, and I'd hope to have something to report out by now, but it's not for lack of trying, and it's not for lack of hard work. So we know that that's important to the industry, and we are working on it diligently. So just wanted to give you all that feedback. I wish it was more definitive. And then I see there's one more, well, the Jakes have their hand up, and I think we can probably take that question, but then I think we're gonna have to wrap just so that we can try to stay on the agenda. We've gone over a little bit so far, and I wanna make sure we have time to get to everything on the agenda, and recognizing that that if we need Metrc to come back for other items that we identify later on in this meeting, I'm sure they'd be willing to do that. So, so why don't we just bounce to the Jakes who had their hand up, and then we'll wrap the Metrc conversation.
Hey, yep. I just wanted to bring up one other thing that we had talked about a few times, which was kind of creating home pages and saving certain settings, such as, like, how many items you can see per page, and how it interacts when you change between licenses. There could definitely be some smoother ways for that to interact and save settings and everything. So yeah, just wanted to make sure we got that on your plate as well.
Yeah,
User preferences.
There is a way to save some of those things. So if you go to your profiles on the top right, there's next to your login, there's that little arrow. If you go to your profile, you can save configurations there, so that that is available.
Awesome, cool, thank you.
All right, I will. With that, I want to just again thank everyone for letting us participate today, and hopefully we great feedback, and obviously we welcome any questions from you all. But I'll turn it back over to Vern and the OCP at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. So yeah, and actually the question that Jake asked is actually something that's further down on the agenda. So when we get to talking about that and then some other things related to it, I think we'll probably wind up listing that as an item that we'd like to have Metrc come back and talk more about. So thanks for bringing it up now. But let's put a bookmark on it, because we do have a topic that should cover it later in the agenda a little bit. I don't think we have answers per se, but it'll be helpful when we form up our next agenda. So thanks for that. And thanks very much to Metrc. I really appreciate them coming. And like I said, they've been a great partner in this work group process. And we've been talking with them just about every week about what's been discussed here after these meetings, and they've been watching as well. So really want to thank them for that, and kudos to them for recognizing the deficiencies around customer service times and wait times and response times, and really stepping up. And, you know, in fairness to them, the kind of improvements that they've shown us here don't happen overnight. So they were keenly aware of the issue before we brought it up to them, and had obviously already started to make corrections and improvements. So, and we're all reaping the benefits of that now. So I just want to thank them for being responsive like that and being a good partner in that regard. So thank you very much to Metrc. Next item on here is on the agenda is testing continued. So what I really wanted to say, just kind of a little communication, closing the gap with you all, is that, you know, we heard you. We understand all the difficulties around testing and how important it is for your business. You know, it's sort of like you're on that last yard of the drive, and you know, you're waiting for the product to clear testing. That's the last hurdle. Then it can go to retail, and then when something happens, it's a big deal. And we recognize that. Metrc recognizes that. So trying to figure out ways that we can prevent errors from occurring that sort of tie things up in Metrc. And what we've done on our end is we've been conferring with other states, because we recognize that, you know, other states, the Metrc users are probably dealing with similar feedback. So we've been talking with other states, other state regulators, trying to find out if they experience the same thing and what they've been doing. We're encouraged that, you know, that at least one other state has been able to simplify the process and make improvements that they feel has really reduced error rates. So we're looking at that and how they did it. We have an idea of how we might apply it here. Way too early to be talking about it, you know, publicly, except to say that, you know, one of the asks that we heard was around, you know, instead of me having to go in and pick these 5 tests, if it's flour, it always needs these. So why can't I just click one button? So we're actually looking at something similar to that. We're finding, we're starting to feel your pain though, because with final form testing, it's not like it's that simple. So there's all kinds of different scenarios that have to be built into it, you know, including what type is it, and has it already passed testing? If yes, what kind of testing? And so we're trying to figure that out. But we are encouraged by what we've seen other states doing. So, like I said, I don't have anything firm to give you, but we are encouraged by what we've learned from other states around this. And I just want you all to know that we heard you, we're working on it, and we feel like it's important too, because, you know, every time that you don't have to put a ticket into Metrc is more time that they have to address the tickets that are there. And, you know, that kind of efficiency works both ways, right? So it works for you all on the industry side, and it certainly works for Metrc on their end too. So, you know, with that, I'll take any questions that folks have, or if there are other things around testing that you wanted to talk about, we can certainly open that up for those kinds of discussions. And I see G. Bickford, you have your hand up. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Hi, it's Genevieve.
Genevieve, thank you.
So I have a question with the testing changes in production batches. So if we send something for testing on heavy metals and then we process it more and we are not required to test it again, if we create a production batch in Metrc, we lose that testing. So how will that work with the state?
That's a great question, and I'm going to have to research that one and take a look at it. I don't have an answer for you, but we need to, from my recollection, is the production batch piece. We're going to have to actually work on that and figure out how to make sure that that doesn't trigger it all over again. I think there are certain tests that will be triggered, but we just have to structure it and formulate it But let me see if I can get a better answer for you before the end of the meeting. If not, we'll certainly put that on for the next meeting,
Okay.
because it's a great question. Anybody else have any follow-up questions on testing? Okay, great. Let's shift over. Next topic on here is APIs. So with APIs, just want to, what we want to do internally here, and let me preface this whole thing by saying, what I know about APIs, I've learned in the last year, and it will fill a good-sized thimble. I'm sure there are people on this call that are a lot more versed in APIs than I am. But what I feel like, what we feel like at OCP we need to do is to get sort of a better handle on it, right? So thinking about it in these terms, and this is my way oversimplified way of looking at it. So we've got third-party software on one side, we've got Metrc on the other side, and the API is the secret handshake between them. It lets them talk to each other and moves the data from your third party into Metrc. So and we hear you all that there are problems with that interaction. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There are some things that won't copy over. Some things that just don't copy over consistently. Sometimes you don't know that it didn't work until much later in the process. And it's a very laborsome process to go back and recreate. So just trying to understand a little bit better about where the problem mechanics are coming in. So is the problem on the end of the API, right in the middle there? Is the problem on Metrc's end? It doesn't know what to do with that information. Is the problem with the software not talking to the API properly? Is it that the software wasn't being utilized? If you made a mistake in the software entry, you put something in the wrong field, then it's going to get correlated to the wrong field in Metrc, those kinds of things. So we just need to really kind of wrap our heads a little bit more around the whole issue around what is sort of the cause of all of these things. And I suspect it might be a little bit of all of those things, depending upon the scenario, but we don't know. We want to hear it from you. I know a few of you have your hands up already. So I think with that, I'll just bounce it out to you all to tell me specifically what your problems are and where the pain points are, so we know what we're trying to fix. And I've got on my screen, I can see Elliot, Justice, and Eddie with your hands up. So if we can just go in that order. You want to start out, Elliot?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good place to kind of kick off that conversation is around transfer manifests. I have now demoed a lot of different third-party softwares, and there isn't one that does that particular connection. And it's typically said that Metrc doesn't allow a third-party software into doing that. If you're using any software, Leaf Logix or MJ Freeway or whatever it is, you have to go into Metrc and do the transfer manifest, and then you can go back to your software. And that's one that is always broken. And there are definitely others, and they vary based on the software and based on the problem. But that one alone, transfer manifests, is definitely one that causes that issue. And then, as a follow-up to this, as something, to look at how we can get any way for Metrc to work with, softwares on that front so that we can do those transfer manifests. There's definitely going to be more, there's definitely going to be others, but that is one that you will find a lot, is the transfer manifest will not work. And it's based on the fact that, like you said, a secret handshake between these two, and Metrc isn't telling anyone what the secret handshake is what we've heard, at least what I've heard on that front. So as an example of what's going on there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Elliot. And Yeah, and my understanding, and certainly we'll talk to Metrc about this when they come back around, probably have to be next week. But my understanding is that they haven't actually activated that functionality in the API. So it's not that it's broken, it's that it doesn't exist. So that'll be a great question for Metrc about that, whether there are any plans to add that functionality in the future or not, and what the rationale might be around that. So continue to bring that up. I know it's an important one for everybody in the industry. I don't blame you one bit for that, and I appreciate your bringing that up. But it's a great example of something that I learned recently, and that Metrc said, well, it's not actually broken. It really doesn't exist. So doesn't do anything to resolve the problem. But I'm happy to hear that it's not broken. But like I said, it doesn't do anything there. Justice, I think I had you up next.
Thanks, Vern. And I just want to follow up to what Ellie was saying. Anytime you got to pivot from one system to another, you're increasing the human error profile considerably. Anytime you have to do that, we found the same thing. With our integration, transfer manifests are, they slow us down. They create a vector for error and problems. But I think at a high level, you're asking, what the problem with the API is that it's not built for business. It's built for regulators. So, it's definitely not built for scalable business. If we're operating at any sort of scale, this becomes a huge time sink, and it's just, you're not able to scale like virtually any other business is. We're able to go get an ERP, and any other business is able to go get an ERP, multiple endpoints, custom configurations, what you need to make your business grow. And that's not Metrc's purpose. Metrc purpose is so that regulators can view our activities and do, seed to sale tracking. So I think that's at a baseline what's wrong with it. So I've had conversations with a couple of people from Metrc recently saying that they are doing an 2.0 API with 27 more endpoints. I wasn't able to get an answer as to whether or not transfer manifest would be one of those, but they also plan on charging everybody for the use of that on top of everything. This is again a public health thing, as stated. I think one of the highest and best uses of Metrc is being able to bring everybody into compliance, so that if there's a bad batch of something, we can contain it and not a bunch of people are going to get sick. But if it's that grave a concern, then we should be met with a system that meets the gravity of that concern. And as it is right now, Metrc can't do that. And we recognize that they're going to try to make changes and do that. But I'm a little taken aback, frankly, that they want to charge us to make it safer. So that's my main concern about that for now.
Yeah, thanks, Justice. I don't have any information specific to 2.0 on the API, so really can't speak to that. But API will be a topic for Metrc for our next meeting, and hopefully they'll be able to shed some light on that. Eddie?
Hey there. So I guess I'd echo just both. I originally put my hand up to speak to transfer manifests. This has been such a long time request since Metrc originally came out, on the East Coast. People have been asking for transfer manifest APIs because it is so labor intensive to have to switch back and forth. And if that's really the only thing that they're not sticking their hand out for, it just, countless hours of people doing manifests across multiple systems. I am also personally a third-party integrator, and I got that, third-party integration in order to extract our own data out of Metrc through the API. So I can, I'm very familiar with the API and I use it fairly regularly. I've never had any real issues, once you get past the learning curve with extracting data from the API, any of the endpoints that are accessible. There is a steep learning curve to being able to do so, and hopefully that API 2.0 addresses it. But I would also echo Justice's comments that charging anyone to get data out of the system just seems not in the best interest of public health and the program at large. People should be able to extract data out into any other form if they can do so currently. Just providing better functionality is, I'm kind of shaking my head when they say they're going to charge people for just data extraction, which is basically all an API is. So those are my 2 cents. It's just, let's push on Metrc to really provide a valid reason for why they haven't been able to stick out their hand when it comes to transfers, and dig in hard there. That more than anything would be countless hours saved if they would just open that API up. And I'm sure every software integrator would jump at the opportunity to improve their own software by meshing, by shaking that hand as well.
Great, thanks, Eddie. Ryan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, we're also experiencing issues with the transfer manifests. One thing that a lot of these third-party integrators aren't touching as well as the testing side of it. And I think it through Metrc, it's got to just be that it's the liability. It's once the product leaves our facility, it's going into the real world, and they don't want anything to happen to it that could come back on them. We are working with a third party that is going to be working with Metrc to hopefully get testing into the system, but we're not sure how it's going to look. So we're hoping to see much more open integration between the two. I wish Metrc was here to talk about this part, but they are out. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, and just to be fair to Metrc, we wanted to address those first 3 issues, recognizing that we didn't have quite enough yet to bring them back to them on the API stuff. So we wanted to push that to our next meeting. So I do envision getting some better answers and some feedback around that from them next time we meet. Clearly, from what I'm hearing, the biggest thing is around the transfer manifests and the ability of FAT to copy over through the API. Are there other things that don't seem to work between your software and Metrc that an API fix would be beneficial to? Not that this isn't important and big, it sure is, but just if there's anything that we should key up for Metrc in anticipation of the next meeting, what might those things be besides the transfer manifests? And Genevieve, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so some of the things we encounter with our third-party system is if we're entering test samples, that doesn't work through the API. If we need to make production batches, that doesn't work through the API. So we have to do all these things manually in both systems.
Okay, entering test samples and the transfers, gotcha. Yeah. And I think while we're on that, we can circle back to the testing piece. I've got John Gagnon in the room with me, and your question about production batches and the final form testing piece. Let me just ask John to turn his camera on, and he can talk to that for us.
Thanks, Fern. Genevieve, I might need to cycle back up with you outside of this meeting, if that's okay. I don't know if we're gonna have time to cover a specific scenario, but I was a little bit confused when you were talking about production batches and final form testing. So if you were creating a new production batch, the product would be changing form, so it wouldn't be in its final form yet. So I'm kind of confused of how, I get what you mean, that production batches resets the testing status, but if the product went through another production batch, it's not in its final form yet. So there might be a little bit of confusion about or what the rule is. I can certainly reach out to you after this if we need to clarify a little bit more. We can do that.
That'd be great.
Okay. Vern, I'll go ahead and kick it back to you. And if there is any great insight that we come up with from that, we'll share with you in the next session for sure.
Justin, did you have your hand up?
He said he was going to take it offline, so I figured I'd just leave it alone for now. I was just saying, because if we, it is confusing, because if you only have to test flour once, but you select it as a production batch, you then have to test it for metals again. And I think the same thing would be true for extracts too. So if you create a bunch of production batch, you're going to lose those solvent tests or metals tests for flour that you, according to the new law, only have to do once. So that is, we've run into some confusion on that as well, and we're not quite sure how, frankly, to do a production batch at the moment and maintain the only having to test for solvents or metals once.
Yeah, Vern, if I could just speak a little bit more on that. So Justice, I think there is a little bit of confusion there, because my understanding of final form isn't really as simple and clean as saying you only have to test the flour once. If that flour was downstream going to go through some extraction process and not heading straight for retail, it's a different scenario. So maybe I can flush this out offline a little bit. Your Justice, you're certainly welcome to reach out to me as well, anyone else in the group, and maybe we can bring something back for the next meeting on that.
Great, thanks everybody. So I know we went back to testing, but we were really wrapping up API, I thought. Everybody good on API for now? And we'll bring Metrc in for a lot more on that in our next meeting. So the next thing on the agenda here is a kind of broad topic called automation. So, you know, we're looking at the feasibility of sort of automation and streamlining testing functionality in Metrc. But what else is important to you all to automate? You know, we're hearing the testing, we're hearing about transfers and the transfer manifests. Are there other things that you all are working on that you would like to see help with as far as getting automation? Again, I'm trying to sort of just tease out, make sure that we're hitting on the high points here, definitely. But are there other things that you all want to talk about, we want to bring on the table? Justice? No, you're good. Okay. All right, that's fine. That's great. If people think of anything, shoot me an email, and we can certainly look at that. We'll look at that, bring it up in the next meeting. But I just want to make sure that we had an opportunity to circle back and make sure that we weren't missing anything there. So next thing on here is the user experience gaps. You know, we understand that from our last meetings that there's some specific customization that, you know, would be beneficial to everybody. And you all have kind of talked about this already in this meeting around, you know, being able to create a home screen and editing some of the default settings, like, you know, can I move, you know, the top 10 items to the top of the list, you know, of my pick list, and so that I can get rid of that thing that I put in there early on in training that we actually never use, or, you know, a line I discontinued but still shows up at the top, or, you know, that kind of stuff. So we're hearing about that sort of stuff. But I guess what I'm asking is, what other kinds of customizations would be helpful for you all? And when we talk about these, if you could, if you have thoughts on that, stuff that you'd like to see improved, and what I'm thinking about is, the single activity that you do every day that you got to click like 5 screens to get to, things like that. Think about it in terms of when you're talking to us about it today, and I hope you've got some ideas, because we're all ears. But think about it in terms of, is it a need, that this is something that we really need to have to improve efficiency and make our operation better? Or is this a want where, hey, this would be cool, but we get by? So just trying to find out what those things are, what's a need, what's a want, so that we can bring that back and talk to Metrc about that kind of functionality, about that user experience. So not seeing any hands going up, which is good. That means I think maybe we've teased the death out of this thing. But we're talking about, essentially, just so I have a good recap on it for us, we're talking about really customizing home screens and the default settings, and being able to adjust those would be the big ask. Is that right, Elliot?
And also just and I know we just talked about it, final form testing, a lot of complications there, the testing ones. Being able to save a lock screen or a home screen is really awesome, but if you're submitting a bunch of tests and clicking all of these different buttons, and that can just be cumbersome as well. And that gets you back on the phone with Metrc, and that gets you back into the testing queue and back into those phone times. So I think the testing ones as well as the home screen ones are both wildly important. And I believe both of them are much more based in needs and not wants, because those needs are reflective of, I'm just not trying to be in the call queue, and I'm not trying to be on a testing team, and we're not trying to wait 72 hours or even 16 hours for just communication back and forth on something that could have just been a button. And because I was submitting 16 tests, some flour, some concentrates, some edibles, some with these things, some without, and you misclick a few things, having a single button for that would be monumentally important and helpful, I think.
Great, thanks. Well, with that, we are running a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great. So maybe we can talk a little bit about sort of the conclusion and next steps here. I think we definitely, I feel like we want to have a 4th meeting, bring Metrc back in to talk about APIs and to talk about testing submissions, talk about home screens, talk about the transfer manifests and the API piece around that. So, we'll certainly be reaching out to Metrc to ask them to come and make a presentation to the group about sort of the status around those things and what they can tell us. Is there anything else that we want to bring on that agenda for what may wind up being our last meeting? Elliot?
So I know it was one that they kind of glazed over, and I think it's one that we here are all a group of people who have kind of gone through a lot of the day-to-day awfulness of the training. But, I don't believe personally Metrc has any real interest in a sandbox. And it is going to be, truthfully, one of the only training tools that will seriously enable all users to learn this software, be it a new hire who's hired for a position, be it a new employee who's just trying to learn how to do certain tasks. The training videos, as in-depth as they are, will never be what a sandbox is, and would truly be something wildly important and wildly helpful for this industry as it grows and as it expands and allows people a greater understanding of a software that they're forced to use that is for the greater good of the whole industry. I really believe that that is something we should push them for. Just as another one to bring up to them, you know, it sort of is, it felt like they were a little bit like, yeah, well, we have all of these videos, kind of what we got. I just really would push for a sandbox, something where we can do no damage and learn the ropes, bring people in there, show them what they did wrong, how testing would work, what buttons to click. You know, it would be wildly helpful. And it would also limit the damage that is done in this software that we can't fix. If I could give one more thing, it would be letting us get in there and edit some of our items. I understand that this is based on data, and that if I assigned inventory to an item, that we can't delete it. And sometimes I make items wrong, and sometimes I'm not perfect. And it would be really helpful to be able to fix those issues. It would be helpful to go back in and remove things that I made wrong and say, hey, you know, I didn't do it right. I picked it wrong category. I did something wrong. That would also be helpful, because if I don't have the sandbox to learn, I kind of need an eraser for when I do make mistakes. And, you know, if it's one or the other, I mean, then at least give me one. You know, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place here, both learning the software and being stuck with the decisions we made while we were learning it is difficult, you know. And I think as we bring more facilities on, and I think as more metrics come up, you won't see as many of those. But the original ones who started at the beginning will always have some bad items and some bad data from just simple misclicks or misunderstandings, and they can't be fixed. And I think Metrc will come back and say, you have 24 hours, you have this, you can do that. And it's just not real. It's not a real world solution for the problems that we're running up against, which is, you know, it's been more than 24 hours. It's more than a name change. It's something institutional on different levels and deeper in that I messed up or didn't do right. And I would like to delete it or change it. But something in that regard, and then something in the regard of a sandbox. I think both of those things would be really helpful for the industry as a whole.
Okay, well, thanks, Elliot. So let me just follow up with a question for you and really anybody on the call here. So, and I'm not making any promises, I'm just asking for my own knowledge base here. So Metrc will say you have 24 hours to make corrections, right? What would you ideally want for a time period? Would 48 hours do it? Are we talking about 72? Are we talking about a week? Are we talking about a month? Or
I would simply say that it's going back. I mean, how long to determine that you made a mistake? It could be a month, it could be a week, it could be 72 hours, but something permanent that allows me to go in there and fix it. If it's been in there for 2 years and it was sitting and dormant and nobody knew about it until, oh my gosh, we have Great Pie again. And that pre-roll we messed up way back in the day. Oh, geez, like I forgot about that one. Or we have a product coming back. And, you know, I think that would definitely, I think that any time frame on it is going to be difficult. I think giving it long-term would be wildly important, because these things change. And you know, 48 hours a week, a month, it may not be that long. It may be way longer. It may be 2 years before I realize that this item is wrong and somebody's clicked it. Now it's back into the queue and it's back over into a retail store and it's back through a transfer manifest. And now it's back again. So, I mean, it's got to be permanent. And I know that's not what they're going to want to hear, but I think it's an honest answer.
Sure. Okay. Let me, I see you have your hand up, Genevieve, and I'll get to you, but I just have another question for Elliot or anybody. So would, trying to think of the right terminology here, but would say, you know, like discontinuing an item be an option where it's still in the system, but it's discontinued. And in order to use it again, you'd have to actually go in and reactivate it, turn it back on, so that somebody couldn't make that mistake where,
right.
You know, would that resolve some of these issues? Or
yeah, at that point, you know, you could inactivate it. You could make the correct version of that item and that one's gone and we're just never going to touch it again. It sits in our inactive items as the bin of bad things we made and wish we didn't. That would definitely help for sure.
Okay, thanks. Genevieve?
Well, I was gonna bring up discontinuing items, but you beat me to it. So that would help immensely because we switched from making a 90 milligram item to 100 milligram and we had to reword them in a certain way so that we could tell the difference and stuff. So it's really easy to select the wrong item.
I'm sorry I stole your thunder, but I only get about one good idea a week, so I had
It's
to roll
okay.
with it.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? Okay, so that's very helpful. So I think we've got a good start for our agenda for next week. I did want to kind of talk a little bit with the group about a legislative report. So, you know, part of what we need to do as a committee is develop a legislative report back to the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee about the work that we did, right? They're going to want to hear from us what we did, the topics that we identified, and really just report out to them what happened from this work group. So, you know, we have a little bit of experience in-house doing this. We did one with medical caregivers last year. And I think that what I'd like to do, if it's okay with folks, is that staff over here at OCP can draft up really a chart, if you will, like 2 columns, one that's got the issues that were raised and the other column that has the resolution, the action items, the discussion around that issue, and whether or not we're able to successfully address it with Metrc, or whether we identified areas for further discussion or further need, and sort of come up with that. And for me, I'm kind of a visual person, so having that in sort of a chart in front of me would be helpful. And then, you know, we can use that as sort of the bones for what we present to the committee on our work. I would propose that that OCP start the draft of that and we share it with you all at the last meeting, the 4th meeting, so that we can run through it and just make sure that we've captured everything and that it's accurate. Also, to the other thing that I would like to say to everybody is, I don't envision that we're going to be able to solve everything that we've identified in this work group, right? But we're looking at this from the OCP perspective. We're looking at this as just the first step. It's not the only step, and we want to continue to work with industry around Metrc pain points and make the system better. So this does not represent the end of the trail for us by any stretch. It's really just the first step. So I wanted to say that out loud so everybody understands that part of it. And you know, what that all is going to look like. I think we'll have a new director coming on board. Hopefully sometime in the next few months, somebody will be selected and we'll know who that is. But I know from the commissioner's office that stakeholder engagement is really a priority for us, regardless of who's in the director's chair. So that part's going to continue. I also feel like, when we present this to the legislature, to the VLA, this information, it shouldn't come from OCP. It should come from this work group. So I'm going to ask, you don't have to commit to anything now, but I would like, some folks from the committee to work with me and, stand shoulder to shoulder when we present it to VLA, so that it doesn't come off as, well, this is what OCP says, because frankly, I think the legislature is more interested in what you all have to say about this than what I have to say about it. So, so just be thinking about that, sort of, in terms like that, about how we structure the report back and who might be willing to be there and present with us when we have to do that. I think this will probably be a January kind of thing for presentation. But I just wanted to throw that out. Anybody have any questions around that? Elliot?
I would just say, I'm personally, and I think everybody else who's been here from the beginning, I would be happy to stand up there and help you present this to the legislation. I think we've done a pretty good job. I feel good about what we've attempted, and even what you said, we can't achieve everything that we've put out there, but we did put a lot of stuff out there, and I'd be happy to help you. So, and same with the report, on that next meeting, send it out to us. We'll get to look it over, throw some things in, throw some edits back at you guys, just so we all feel good about it. Just let us know how we can help.
Well, I appreciate that. And it will definitely be a collaborative effort. It's not something that I want OCP to take on its own. So appreciate that. So the next meeting, we kind of have a tentative schedule, which would be like November 8th at 2 o'clock. Having said that, that's election day. I don't know if anybody in here on the group is running for office and wants to stand outside the polls that day, or if we're all available. It's a work day for us here at OCP, but we recognize that, if you're politically active, it may not be the best day for you. So anybody have any significant issues if we were to schedule it on November 8th? Great. I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll do a tentative November 8th, 2 o'clock. We'll circulate the agenda, the Zoom link, and we'll be working on on a draft of the report. What we have. Obviously, we'll have things that come out of the last meeting, but we can certainly get the bones of it out there. All right. If nobody else has anything, I think we can call this a wrap.
Awesome. Thank you, Vernon.
Right.
Have a good one. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Thanks.
See you guys.
everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.